Perfection is a sheet of A4 paper, a blank canvas, a slab of marble, blank film, crisp, pristine, no crinkles nor mars to the paper, unsullied of paint, unblemished to the touch of ink, nor graphite, nor chisel. To strive for perfection is to strive for a world without art. To put pen to paper is to ruin perfection, and Guillermo del Toro understands that better than most. Many of his movies focus on the ugly, the grotesque, not for the gross-out factor, but for their humanity, hidden in another form. I think Guillermo says it best himself.
My aspiration is to be as imperfect as I can, and since I am an optional person, people can take me or leave me. Please feel free to take, or please feel free to leave,
In his independent films, Guillermo tends to tell similar tales with different variants. Innuendo Studios even made the joke that Guillermo just keeps making the same movie over and over. One can definitely tell a Del Toro movie by the feel of the film, the flavor of the shot composition, and the color choices. His most famous movies, and those that I consider feel the most Del Toro, include Pan's Labyrinth and The Shape of Water. Both of these films are independent or indie films shot with budgets under $20 million. They both feature sympathetic monsters. They both feature a main female lead who finds themselves on the edge of accepted society for one reason or another. And they both feature authoritarian male antagonists who themselves are also sympathetic in a way and could be heroes if they were featured in older style films, but find themselves so rigid in the following of expectations set upon them by society or parental figures that they find themselves the villains, whom are karmically cut down by those whom they oppress. In this next clip, Del Toro is specifically talking about the villain of The Shape of Water, Strickland, but I feel is an excellent encapsulation of most of his villains.
Something that I find really fascinating is the way that you change who the monster is. So in this film, the monster is not the monster, it's Strickland, it's the guy,
the human.
It's the human guy
not
who's
only
oppressing
human,
everybody else.
It's a human that swears he's perfect.
Yes.
It's a human that swears he's decent. It's a human that thinks everybody else is alien, despicable, or invisible. Because I think there's nothing more monstrous than perfection.
This thought of perfection, or of staunchly following to a rigid social hierarchy, is often featured prominently in his villains. Other examples include Jacinto from The Devil's Backbone and Lucille Sharp from Crimson Peak. These themes are interesting enough and all, but this video essay is meant to be a final project for my Intro to Latino, Latina, and Latinx Studies class, so why am I talking about any of this at all? What does Del Toro's films have anything to do with Latino studies? I'd like to argue that it matters because of the borderlands, a topic that we've discussed in class. The borderlands is a theory brought forth by Gloria Analzulda, whom was a prolific Chicana writer. To oversimplify it severely, the borderlands is a place that one finds themselves when torn between different identities. Guillermo himself is an immigrant. He has lived in the U.S. since 1997, after his dad was kidnapped in Guadalajara. He was only able to pay the ransom for his dad's life thanks to the friendship that he had developed with James Cameron. From this point on, for the safety of his family, he's remained in the U.S., frequently expressing feelings of being in exile from his beloved homeland. His films frequently have main leads that are caught between the society that they should want to conform to and the chance at living a different life, a borderlands of their own. And I would posit that Guillermo himself, with the many hats he's held, from makeup artist to screenwriter to filmmaker to author and producer, as well as being torn between nations, is a good representation of a person at an intersection. He knew from a young age that he wanted to go into film, and did his best to take strides to get there. He graduated from the University of Guadalajara, first working as a writer for a Twilight Zone-esque show called La Hora Marcada, where he met Alfonso Cuarón, more about him later. And then he worked as a special effects makeup artist, learning from Dick Smith, and then opened Mexico's first dedicated special effects makeup companies, which he ended up running until his first film, Cronos. Already, from these experiences, we can see he is a difficult person to pin down into one genre, if it weren't obvious from his films alone.
The day I saw Los Olvidados, I thought it's possible to make movies in Spanish, and for me to declare that I wanted to make movies, not only movies, I declared I wanted to do fantasy films.
Right.
From the provinces. It was really, really weird because I didn't fit, to this day I don't fit not only on my clothes, but I don't fit in really in any scheme.
Yeah.
I am not an industrial filmmaker in Hollywood that I don't know the name of any agent or studio head. I don't dine at Spagos. Mm-hmm. But back then it was equally puzzling because I had it very clear since I was a kid. I said, I want to make fantasy movies. I wanted to make them only in Mexico. It was the kidnapping of my dad that made me make movies in other languages because I had to leave my country. But if I had it my way, I would have only made movies in Spanish about my hometown, actually.
There's no way to look into Del Toro's films without acknowledging that he is part of a trio, the three amigos of Hollywood, consisting of himself, the aforementioned Alfonso Cuarón, and Alejandro González Iñárritu. They all met in Mexico, becoming fast friends, influencing each other, and becoming mentors to each other in a time where Mexican cinema was past its golden age. I think this clip shows their dynamic the best. It's a bit longer, but bear with me.
You're often put into the trio of Cuarón and Iñárritu, and you guys came up together. Do you watch movies together? Did you grow up watching movies together?
No, I have never watched a movie with them.
No.
That is not one of our own.
At one of your premieres?
Yeah, the closest we've come to that is to argue the week of a movie opening, and they see it separate of each other, and we often, very often, are in complete opposite. In that, too stubborn. We were coming up, Alfonso and I came up more or less at the same time, but Alfonso was already famous as an assistant director and quite a brilliant guy, and I was doing storyboards and special effects, blah, blah, blah. And we Chibo, Alfonso, and I are, although we're age different, we came up at the same time. Alejandro was doing commercials, radio. Mm-hmm. We came together with Alejandro at the same time in 2000, 2001. So 15 years ago.
The Three Amigos thing, the first one I met was Guillermo del Toro when I was editing Amores Perros. But being multi-structured and it was my first film narratively, I have some doubts about it. And so a friend of mine, Antonio Urrutia, another filmmaker, knew Guillermo del Toro. And he said, you should send this to Guillermo del Toro to help you, to give your opinion. Or Guillermo already has direct other films.
He was... I came to him because Alfonso called me and he said, there's this guy that just did a movie called Amores Perros.
So he was telling me so much about Alejandro. He contacted me, he showed me the short. I saw the short, he says, Alejandro, this is horrible. And we talked about it. And then he went back and he started writing and stuff. And then he came up with the screenplay of Amores Perros and I was like, wow, and he read it. And I called Guillermo and said, Guillermo, do you mind if you see this thing?
It's a brilliant movie, but it's about X too long, and no one can argue him into cutting it.
So I sent it to him through Antonio Urrutia.
And I called Alejandro, I didn't know him. I called him and I said, this is me, blah, blah, blah.
Literally 6 a.m. I received a call. Negro, es increíble, está poca madre. Who is Guillermo del Toro? Well, I have some ideas. I said, what ideas? I think the second story, you should take it out. And I said, what? The second story doesn't work. I think it doesn't work. You just stay with the first one and the third one. I said, what? So he started explaining me why, and I said, you're crazy. I was offended. I was like, what? It's like your kid is beautiful. Just cut the leg. The left leg is horrible. What do you mean? It will not walk without it.
And I'm gonna go help you because Alfonso says your movie is good. He says, I'm gonna send you the movie.
In a heat discussion, I said, well, I challenged him. I said, well, if you want to tell me that, come here. It's very easy to say, take it out. No, you come and I will prove you that you can do that. Okay, I will go. I'm going tomorrow. He was in Guadalajara.
And this bastard, instead of saying, Alejandro, come up, he arrives to Alejandro's house, not knowing Alejandro. They didn't know each other. With his bag, because he was going to stay there 2 days or 3 days. I don't know how many days you stayed.
Next day, I opened the door. I saw that guy that big with like childish eyes. He went and jumped directly to the refrigerator, eat everything in my house, my kids' food. We went down to the studio and we spent like 3 days together, beautiful, funny days, where he was really just trying to do things, proposing me things. And I bought some things, I bought not some things, but he helped me to get down the film like maybe 6-7 minutes, which were incredibly interesting.
Yeah. I have those VHSs.
Wow.
And I can prove that we took out 20 minutes. Alejandro says 7, and in some interviews 3, 20.
A big conflict. According to Guillermo, how many minutes you got?
Conflict. I have a VHS. It's 21 minutes longer before we fucked it up.
Okay, according to Guillermo, he cut 21 movies out of Amores Perros. According to Alejandro, it's 3 or 4?
No, Alejandro said 7 and then 3.
Yeah. But anyway, so that was the beginning of a collaboration. So he released Amores Perros, and he became part of also a bouncing board for this film.
And very powerful. I think his comments really shaped me a lot. I mean, teach me a lot and helped me a lot to understand how a film can be tight and more effective, and so he helped me a lot.
And we reorganized the structure. We did change the structure.
Wow.
And from then, we became friends, and since then, each other see the cuts of each other. Since then. So every time that I finish, he see my cut, I see his cuts, and always is kind of a commitment to help each other to do comments. So it has been a beautiful relation.
And Alejandro showed up when I logged Pan's Labyrinth, and he came in the last day before we needed to deliver the movie, and in one day, in one night with Chinese food, we removed 15 minutes out of Pan's Labyrinth in one night.
Wow.
If he would be looking at it and say, and you're gonna wait for the camera to go all the way, cut it from here to there. No, it's a great crane. It's horrible. And we are brutal, blah, blah, all that is very well known. But we do discuss, our tastes are so different. If the world was ending, Alfonso will save a Bresson, or Alejandro will save an Antonioni. I would probably save the Road Warrior.
Guillermo's first meeting with Cuarón and their subsequent friendship was equally bombastic, and the three of them are still friends to this day. All three of them have movies or interactive media that looks at the plight of those who are maligned by society, such as the Fugees in Cuarón's Children of Men, or the retelling of Mexican immigrants' experiences at the border in Iñárritu's Carne y Reina. I think these stories and themes resonate with the three of them, and that all three of them find themselves in the borderland. I argue that the three of them are inspirations to the people who follow in their footsteps. All three of them have made award-winning films, as well as smaller affairs that feel more personal. Each one has their own focus, and I think that though we may have a Cuarón or an Iñárritu without a Del Toro, there most certainly would not be the same people without him. Del Toro himself has said he stepped into producer roles to act as a shield for newer minority directors, becoming the intermediary between the studio and the director, in a way that he had to learn on his own with the production of Mimic, his first American production. Examples include Juan Antonio Bayona and George Gutierrez, Isa Lopez, and Andy Muschietti. He has acted as a mentor to these directors, allowing them to thrive and have the support that they need to realize their vision. Even the 3 Latino people that work in film that I interviewed for this project felt that Guillermo's films had a resonant quality. One said Guillermo and Cuarón had inspired him to go into film, and one felt that the 3 amigos had
inspired more than the next Best Picture winning Latino directors out there. We should keep erasing lines in the sand. They showed us that only because we have a birth label doesn't mean anything for what we can do with our future.
This is why we should care about Guillermo del Toro, Alfonso Cuarón, and Alejandro Iñárritu. We should care because they're the start of a new wave of voices whom finally have a mouthpiece. Their struggles and recognition in Hollywood have added to the slowly building traction of more Latin representation at the table, more films being made, and more opportunities being extended from companies that generally try to keep it safe. If Guillermo had never been weird, had the audacity to be authentically himself, been the intersection of experiences that he is, been enamored with the niche, or fantastical, or grotesque, or any of that, then I argue that we would not have The Revenant, or Birdman, Carne y Arena, Children of Men, Gravity, Roma. We would not have Antlers, or Mama, or The Book of Life, and if we did, then we would be lesser for the loss of his influence. To remove Del Toro would be to remove his infectious, unabated enthusiasm for life, for the weird, for all things nerdy and less mainstream. We would all be a little more perfect and a little less human.
There will always be someone that you will resonate with, no matter how weird you get. And I think the biggest mistake you can do as an artist is to try to think outside. Try to think, how do I access? The only thing you have is your voice.
Right.
Yeah. And the more your own it is, the clearer it sounds.